Good. You managed to get your camera fixed and everything?
Yeah.
Good,
Okay.
good, good, good.
Yeah, all good. No longer yellow. Um, how are you, Ed? How are you going?
Yeah, good. I don't know if you know, the country's going through a bit of a storm at the moment, so everything's
Oh,
flooded and roads closed, and
no.
a lot of people are locked in houses, and the emergency services have got boats out. But apart
Right.
from that, it's not stopped me going to work. Unfortunately, I still have to go to work. But hey, how are you?
Yeah. I'm pretty good. Just been chilling. It's starting to heat up over here. It's no longer
Nice.
freezing. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
summer's on its way.
Yeah. So I guess to get this interview started, I'll ask you a few questions. Tell us a bit about yourself, Edward. How'd you get into theatre and stuff?
Okay. Oh, okay. So that's a pretty straightforward question. So my parents used to take me to the theatre all the time
Yeah.
as a child, and I was taken to Panto every year, and I just saw all these actors on stage having a fantastic time. For those who don't know what pantomime is, it's just a crazy story of like Cinderella or Dick Whittington set to music for kids, and they're just really really good fun. And I just these actors having this great time, and I thought, you know what, I wouldn't mind doing that. And I didn't realise it was actually at the time it was a job. I just thought these
Yeah.
people turned up, did it for the night, and then went home.
Oh,
But they
yeah.
made a I saw that. I wanted a slice of the action. So I went off and auditioned for drama school. I joined the National Youth Theatre, the National Youth Music Theatre. I went to drama school, did 3 years, and then got myself an agent and started
Oh,
working, doing
oh,
off with classical plays. And
oh,
then that's how it all snowballed from there. So yeah, that's how it all began.
oh, that's really cool. So the next question is, how'd you get involved with Thomas the Tank Engine, when that came around?
Right. Well, okay. So I had a phone call from my agent who said there's an arena tour of a new musical. And I thought, oh, right. So it's going to be something like Les Mis or Phantom or something
Yeah.
like that. He said, oh, no, 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 no. It's something completely different. I said, okay, Barry, what's that? He said, well, it is a musical of Thomas the Tank.
Oh, yeah.
I said, okay, that's going to be interesting. How they're going to do that with trains and what have you. He said, look, don't worry about that at the moment. He says, just go for the audition. And I remember I had to go to Elstree Studios in London.
Yeah.
I turned to a speech or a monologue, and then you had to do a short song to the audition panel. And that was Ian Lachlan and Dan Colman, so the producers and directors. Did my thing and thought, right, that's, as you do with most auditions, you leave it, walk away, and think, right, I'll put that to bed, and if it comes off, it does, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. And then
Oh,
a
yeah.
few weeks later, phone call, and I was told that I'd seconded the job.
Oh, that's cool. Um, so what was it like, rehearsing the first tour and seeing the engines for the first time?
Well, I can remember seeing them for the first time. It's something you just can't forget because they were just gigantic. I mean, they were huge machines,
Oh, yeah.
and obviously they ran on these train tracks. Um, and I have the claim to fame that James is in the Guinness Book of Records
Yeah.
um, as the world's largest working model railway.
Yeah.
It's something I was really really proud of. The rehearsal process was unlike any other rehearsal process that I'd ever done because the star of the show are these trains, and that's what the audience have come for. So you had to learn your dance routines around the trains. You had to be aware of not falling over the train tracks that were raised on
Oh,
the
yeah.
arena floor. They sort of came up about sort of 5-6 inches. So you were dancing over those. Inside the trains were these little control panels, like a yellow box, and they had all these little buttons. Now the faces of these trains were animatronic. So when you were going through your script, you had to know what face your train needed to have at any particular line when a line was said either by Thomas or Percy. So it wasn't a show where you could just switch off and think, well, I'm not involved at this particular moment in time, because you constantly had to listen to the script and make sure that your train was reacting facially
Mm.
according to what it said on stage. So there were lots to think about. You certainly couldn't do that show half asleep. You had to be very, very much
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
aware. Um, so So yeah, and then you had the steering system on these trains. So you had your face, you had about 6 buttons for your face. You had a big red emergency stop button if something went wrong or somebody was on the tracks and you couldn't stop the vehicle. You could button, and it had a smoke button on it. So every time the engine spoke, you had to push the button for the face that relates to what they're saying and the feeling that the train had. And then the puff of smoke, you had to keep tapping that every time your train spoke, so the
Oh
smoke
yeah.
matched. That was, and it was a clever idea because that was so the audience knew which trains were talking at what time, because a
Yeah.
lot of the time they were heads. So by doing the smoke, the focus was brought to the particular train that was saying their lines.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the rehearsal was amazing. And I remember the very first time that we put it all together, it was at Elstree, and it was in the George Lucas studio that's there, which is the largest studio there because that was the only film studio that could accommodate the set. So when it was
Yeah.
all built up, Harold the helicopter hanging from the roof and what have you, it was really was a sight to behold.
I can imagine. Um, was it difficult getting a hang of driving the trains at first?
So the trains had this system called a bias system.
Yeah.
The wheels of the train were trapped between two metal rails, which effectively was the train track that went
Yeah.
around the. And a bias system was so in addition to the 6, I think it was 6 buttons for these faces, the smoke button, you had the bias system, which was a metal lever that came out of the control system, and the wheels would hug either left or right. So there was a track within a track. I'm sure you've seen the set
Yeah.
many times. You got an outside track, and then you got an inner track. And if you wanted to go into the inner track, you'd have to make sure these bias levers were on the right way. Um, I remember, I remember once I got it right. I have to say, after lots of practice, I got it right of how it all worked. But they relied on gas, and every time the show
Oh yeah.
started, the tech go over the trains, make sure these gas bottles were full, because
Oh
the
yeah.
only way these wheels could hug the system was if the gas had enough pressure to push the wheels either left or
Yeah.
right. And I remember, I think we're at Birmingham at the National Indoor Arena, and I'm waving to the kids. It's the opening number, and all these trains are coming out, and the kids are going mental because they've seen the size of these trains. There's Percy, there's Thomas, there's Gordon coming out, there's James, and I'm waving along, and I had my bias system on,
Yeah.
and then suddenly, I mean, these things probably they weren't going that fast, but they were enough to throw you off your seat if anything went wrong.
Yeah.
And I think you 8 miles per hour. And I came up to this junction, and I wasn't worried about it because my wheels were biasing on the left-hand side of the road.
Yeah.
That isn't going to. There was the most almightiest, biggest bang, and
Oh
James came
no.
to stop. I was thrown off my seat, and I just disappeared inside the front of James. And what had happened?
Oh no.
We had, we had this system called in-ears, and these in-ears
Yeah.
are what you pop stars wear. So with arenas, obviously, there's a huge delay from hearing the music when you're singing to
Yeah.
singing. Sometimes you can be the track. So you have these in ears, and what these in ears also enabled us to do is have direct. Well, we didn't have direct contact, but we could
Yeah.
hear the speaking to us. And of course, if one train stops, because it's all synchronized and choreographed, the whole system has to slow and stop as well for
Yeah.
safety. So I've got the stage manager saying, Ed, can you move your train, please? Can you move your train? As if I've
Oh no.
heard.
Yeah.
So I brought back to her and saying, look, I can't, it's stuck. And she goes, Ed, you need to move your train, please move your train. I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't. And she can't hear me because these systems are only one way.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the technical crew came out and had to come with this massive crowbar, which would pull the wheels to the left-hand side.
Yeah.
And then I could, and at the
Yeah.
back, technical crew were all over James to try and keep the
Yeah.
show going. Right, let's get this fixed quickly.
Yeah.
Anyway, it transpired the gas bottle hadn't been changed from the previous show. So all the
Yeah.
gas had been, the wheels weren't going left or right. Hence why I collided with this junction.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah. In fact, Percy mentioned that like that happened live, right?
that's right, yeah, it did.
Yeah, Percy
It,
mentioned that and just how much of a panic it was, having to deal with that. Like, geez,
yeah,
thankfully it was all fixed in the end and the show went on, from what I heard.
yes, it did. Yeah, it did. The
Yeah.
technical crew came out, got the wheels unstuck from the junction. We went round the back of the sheds,
Yeah.
and then technical crew, which was there's about 30 people backstage, were all over James to try and find out what it was. They threw a bottle on, connected it,
Yeah.
and the show. But the beautiful thing about Thomas, the musical, was that it's all highly choreographed, and it just takes one train to stop. And
Yeah,
because everything's track with a computer for their voices, um, you can't even ad lib because it's all pre-recorded. So you couldn't
yeah,
cover
yeah,
yourself by time. It has to continue once it started. It's like a snowball. Once it
yeah.
starts, on and on.
One thing being mentioned about being thrown forward in James's cab, was there a seat in the cab at all? 'Cause there's one in Thomas and Percy, but I'm not sure about James.
Was there a what? Sorry.
A seat, a chair in James's
Yeah.
cab.
Yes, there was.
Oh, okay, yeah. Wasn't really sure on that. Can't really see from the photos at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they all these the seats in. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Did you ever drive any of the other trains outside of Percy when he was
Yes.
completed?
Yeah. We all had to go in each train.
Oh, yeah.
But it's because you became really weird, and it's going to sound really odd, but you became very protective over your train.
Yes.
You knew how it worked, and some trains were bigger than others, and some were smaller than others, and you think, I don't think you're quite ready to drive this one yet. So that
Yeah,
they
yeah.
became an extension of you. But yes, we did get to drive everybody.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
and they
Um,
all followed inside. They were all very similar, if not
yeah,
exactly
yeah.
the same. And I'm not sure. I'm sure I'm right with saying this, that when we went to BBC Special Effects, see them in their infancy when they were first
Oh,
being
yeah.
built, the one of the guys said there that um, they had the same paintwork that they get on Ferrari cars, the same lacquer, the same everything. So there was no
Yeah.
expense spent. Yeah, they were phenomenal things.
Oh, yeah. So on to the next question. How did you get into James's cab? Like, there weren't really any steps. It was a pretty small gap between the tender and engine. Like, was it difficult getting on and off James?
Yeah, it was very tight. You had a very small slip to get into
Yeah.
the cab. You had to couldn't go in, and you had to crouch down and bend down. I'm just there was you had, and they were hidden. I think you did have a metal um, like stirrup that was hidden just underneath the wheels where your foot could go to get in.
Alright.
Um, you wouldn't see it unless you knew it was there. But there was a metal stirrup that was hidden. Put your foot in, get in sideways, sit down, and then off you go.
Alright. So, what was your favorite part of the arena tours? Like, favorite part of the show?
It was. I can answer that straight away. It was when out the shed.
Yeah.
In fact, not. You know what? It was when. I mean, obviously Thomas was the star of the show,
Yeah.
um, but when any of the trains, the very first time popped out, the arenas went wild. It was like Kylie Minogue had walked out as
Alright.
just. It was unbelievable that
Oh,
the
yeah.
power that these trains and these characters had. These kids were just beside themselves.
Mm.
So it's
Yeah.
at the very top of the show. That was always the best part of it, and they could
Oh,
see
yeah.
scale at the top of the show. Obviously, the faces pop out, but
Yeah.
then they start to come out the tunnel, and
Oh,
trains
yeah.
keep going and on. They're like, "Wow, okay, this is spectacular."
You also voiced James the Red Engine. Was there anyone else who was gonna be the voice of him, or were you just always going to?
Um, I was asked. I don't know the answer to that question. There might have been. Usually, when you're working in voiceovers or musical theatre or the acting industry, you don't usually tend to find out if anybody else is up against your part.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't hear of anybody auditioning for it, and it was the producer that came to me and said, "Would you like to trial for it?" And I went to
Oh,
the
yeah.
studios called Second Sense in Boreham Wood, and we laid down some tracks of how we thought James would sound. And James is a
Yeah.
very proud and quite very private schoolboyish
Yeah.
sounding.
Yes.
Um, yeah. So I don't know if anybody else was up for it, but it was an honour to be able to do James's voice for that arena.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you did a pretty good job, in my opinion. Hit the nail perfectly.
Thank
Oh,
you,
yeah.
very kind.
Oh, yeah. Oof.
Would you like to see it come back if it ever came back?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I heard that it was in 2007 it was gonna come to Australia, but that just never really happened, which is a shame. But oh well, that's how it went. Yeah,
Yeah,
it would be nice to like see something like this again. Like you just don't get this sort of well, quality really. Like it's an actual like giant railway on the stage. It's pretty
yeah,
impressive stuff. Yeah.
yeah. And there were quite a few stage trucks lugging it around the UK.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
one, there were quite a few of them.
Yeah. What was it like unloading the engines and getting everything set up for each showing?
So we didn't get to see that very much because usually when that happens,
Mm,
only the are allowed in the area because they know where things are going, and obviously you've got roof and scaffolding coming in and coming out.
yeah.
However, there were times, if you're going to your dressing room, just setting your dressing room up ready for that day's show, they'd still be working on it. It was it was nothing short of um, well, it was like just a huge building site, and everybody knowing exactly what they're doing, because obviously time is money. With
Yeah.
a show of that size and scale, that costs a lot of money to mount. So it needs to get in, get it up, get the audience in, and start,
Yeah. Yeah.
recouping some. It was very big, and it was like a very well-oiled machine. Um, they were in the first thing in the morning. The trucks would be offloaded. They'd be put to one side. In fact, they were the very last things that would come into the
Yeah.
when the set was put. The very last things to be put in because they came off these trucks covered in foam and blankets, and they were ever so well
Yeah.
protected, so they wouldn't get any damage. Um, but yeah, it's like a well-oiled machine, and I think it took the best part of a day after a while to get everything in, the lights in,
Yeah.
and the track down. And yeah, it was a really it's really well working crew and cast. We
Uh,
worked really together.
oh, actually another question to Jack the front loader, the digger character. How did he work? Because he didn't go on the train tracks. He was like an actual road vehicle. How did they like get him in and out of the tunnels without him falling into the train tracks?
So on the train tracks on the floor, if you look carefully, there are some areas that have got little ramps going up,
Oh yeah.
and they're there on the outside of the tracks. They're there permanently, and then you'll find sometimes there'll be crew members that come on, and I think they're all dressed in blue with caps on, and they had headsets on. They would drop like a square block over the two wooden ramps in the middle of the train track, thus
Oh yeah.
creating a little bridge for the cars to go over, and then
Oh
they'd pull
yeah.
it out the way. So yeah, it's one of those things that unless you know what you're looking for, you wouldn't see that because it's done so swiftly.
Oh yeah. So what have you been up to since your work on Thomas?
Well, okay, so lots of stuff. I left Thomas, and then I did several plays nationally,
Oh yeah.
and, and then I still to this day I do a lot of voiceovers for television and film
Oh yeah.
and for cinemas. I do a lot of audio description for cinemas. And as in addition to that, I also run in the UK. I run the second oldest musical theatre college in the UK. I'm the
Oh yeah.
principal there. Now I'm seeing younger versions of myself coming through the college, being singing and dance, and hopefully going on to work in the industry. A lot of our
Yeah.
graduates do go on to work. Um, do you get Strictly in Australia? I suppose you do. Strictly Come Dancing. Do you get that?
Um, Wait, pardon, didn't really get that part. Didn't really hear what you said.
Do you get Strictly Come Dancing in Australia?
I'm not sure to be honest. Outside
It's
of
a
Tom, outside of Thomas, I don't really know much about theatre to be honest.
right. No, because one of our graduates, when he graduated, he went to go and do Strictly Come Dancing, which is a BBC TV program, and I think it
Oh
goes
yeah.
right. And anyway, he won that. But yes, so it's the Midlands Academy of Dance and Drama, and it's a musical theatre college, and we train professional musical theatre and dance performers.
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm really glad to see you're like really going places these days.
Yeah, there's a saying in this business that if you work in theatre, that you don't retire from it; it retires.
Oh
So
yeah.
working. I hope I'm still relevant. Um, so yeah, and I love it. I couldn't do anything else.
All
I
right.
get talent, so I'm very lucky, very blessed.
All right. That was really good. Yeah, it's basically all my questions, to be honest. Blasted through them pretty quickly. Yeah, so thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today about Thomas and what you've been up to. Thank
My
you so
pleasure.
much.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for taking an interest, and
All
you
right.
know where I am. Me. I'm not the quickest to get back,
Yeah,
but
that's all right.
I will do it at some point. So yeah, if you ever
Yeah.
need me again, please just give us a call. I'll be more than happy to talk to you. Or
Okay.
I'll show you some. I've got those posters and some
Yeah.
script stuff, bits and bobs, and I have dug them out,
Yeah.
and I'll when I get a moment, I'll ping some images over to you so you can
Okay.
share those as well.
All right. Thank you so much, Ed. Yeah.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you so much. Bless and take care.
Oh, yeah. You too. See you, Ed.
Bye bye now.
See ya.